All right, gentlemen, it's masterclass time again. And this coming Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, if you're listening to this show within a few days of its release, is going to be one of the most powerful masterclasses yet. It's simply called Winning. No excuses, no apologies, just victory. In this masterclass, yes, you can expect actual practical steps to winning along with the mindsets you need to install to emerge victorious more than you ever have before in your entire life until now. And yes, like so many other things in this life, being a champion is a learned skill. Winning is a habit, and you can learn it. Gentlemen, the most terrible insult that can ever be levied upon one of us as a man is to be called a loser. You know it, and I know it. Yet, whenever someone says, hey, there goes a winner, we know exactly what's being spoken. Respect and honor towards the man who is seen amongst his fellow men, and yes, among women as well, as a champion. When you win in life, you're getting the most out of your life. Today, with Dr. Rick Kirchner, we're going to be talking about how health and happiness are related. It all adds up to winning, gentlemen. And if you're not winning, you're not getting the most out of your life as a masculine man who was indeed born to win. Grab your ticket for this absolutely essential masterclass at mountaintopodcast.com/masterclass. And I'll see you there this coming Wednesday at 8 o'clock sharp Eastern Daylight Time. That's GMT -4 for you guys overseas. And now, here comes that excellent episode with my good friend and returning guest, Dr. Rick Kirchner. Enjoy this one, gentlemen.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scott McKay, and today I have a returning guest on who's going to talk about something that, well, every one of us as men should find this to be an incredibly important topic. And if you don't, maybe we can convince you that it should be after we're done with this discussion. Before I reintroduce you to him, however, I want to remind you that you can find me at Scott McKay on most everywhere that is a social media / online content promoting place online, including YouTube, on X, and on TikTok and on True Social. And you can find me at Real Scott McKay on Instagram and Threads, although I barely use Threads, so don't even bother there. The welcome mat is out for you at the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Gentlemen, if you have not joined that thriving Facebook group yet, you really should. We're waiting to meet you there and talk about ways to be a better man and to get better with women. Also, last but not least, visit mountaintoppodcast.com, which is the website of this show. Indeed, from Northern Idaho, my returning guest is an author, a filmmaker, which we're going to talk about, and a retired doctor of naturopathic medicine. Coming to us once again, none other than the author of Dealing with People You Can't Stand, How to Bring Out the Best in People at Their Worst, and also the producer and director of a new documentary on the healthcare industry. Today's topic is health and happiness are related. Dr. Rick Kirchner, welcome back, man.
Hey, nice to be back with you.
Yeah, we had a great time the last time you were on a couple years back talking about your core topic of your multi-time best-selling book, now in its 4th edition, by the way, with 90 new pages. You just keep adding content to it, right?
Yeah, just keeps growing.
Yeah, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, How to Bring Out the Best in People at Their Worst. I guess there are just more people we can't stand coming out of the woodwork on the daily, huh?
Years and years, I got up in front of audiences and did presentations on this particular topic all over the world. And after about 30 some years, I began to wonder, hasn't everybody heard this by now? And then I realized there's new people coming along all the time and new problems that they bring with them. So the problem of problem people isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking there are probably more ways than ever before for people to be annoying and unlikable.
Yeah, there most certainly are. And, I'd say social media has brought out the worst in a whole lot of people.
Sure.
The use of devices has created so much separation between people. It seems to me like the ability to engage with other people and do what you and I are doing, which is to have a conversation, that ability is fading away for a lot of people. And it's a shame because a healthy society, a happy society depends on our ability to talk with each other. A happy relationship requires on the ability to talk with each other. So I'm glad we have a chance to do this.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you, man. You know, what you're talking about is very well documented during the course of this show. We're all about getting better with women and being better men. And if you want to be good with women, you have to actually get out there and interact with real women and hopefully be likable and charming so that they'll like you back. And, this is something that your book hits right down the fairway. You have a new documentary out that kind of dovetails with the topic today. It's on the healthcare system. Give us the elevator pitch on what that's about.
Well, this is a documentary I made. It's called How Healthcare Became Sick Care, The True History of Medicine. And it tells the story of how we wound up with a system that's more interested in getting people on drugs and cutting off troublesome body parts than it is in providing health care. So it's an interesting movie. It's free on my website at talknatural.com. 24 hours a day. Anybody can watch it that wants to. But I felt like it was a story that needed to be told. And it was a research project for me. I really wanted to understand it for myself. And I'm real happy with the way it turned out.
Now, indeed, what we're talking about today is how health and happiness are related. So perhaps not coincidentally, two of the topics you're passionate about are the sick care system, which I believe you correctly referred to it as here in the United States, and people being hard to deal with. What's the relationship between those two X factors? This ought to be good. I want to hear your answer there.
Well, I would say that in a increasingly sick society, which is what we have more chronic illness than ever before. We have more serious illness than ever before, and it's moving further down the life cycle into younger and younger people now. You've got people in their 20s now with serious chronic illness, something that when I was in my 20s, you almost never came across. So the society has been sickened by the way that it takes care of itself, the way that it approaches the subject of health. And we have a medical system in place that actually reinforces the bad choices that people make by giving them the idea that there's a quick way out, take this pill, or let us cut that thing off.
Or shoot that Ozempic.
Yeah, exactly. Take a pill and your problem is solved. And it's a beautiful promise on the front end, but what people discover over time is it's an unfulfilled promise on the back end, that nothing works out exactly that way. And in fact, one of the things that I think men intrinsically know is that adversity builds character. You have to push back in life. You have to strive. You have to take on a challenge in order to become who you're meant to be. And that's how health works too. You have to meet the challenge of taking care of yourself. I'm 75 years old. I have tremendous vitality and I have zero interest in taking drugs or relying on a system that I see as a very sick system. And I have focused on my own health and well-being for my entire adult life. And I feel like it shows. So I encourage people to take on this challenge of being the best person you can be, the most fulfilled person you can be, because that's going to have the side effect of making you resilient and healthy.
Now, a lot of the meds that were prescribed are indeed managing something, not curing or solving any problem.
That's right.
The problem is, hey, now you're on this drug for the rest of your life. Thank you for contributing to Big Pharma, and we appreciate you. And when you die someday of it, too bad, so sad. I'd like to go ahead and throw on the table this idea. When you're not at your best physically, as a man, as a woman, as a human being, as a kid, even as a pet, really, livestock, we can go through the entire vertebrate kingdom here. When you're too fat, when your blood sugar is off, when your testosterone levels aren't what they should be, it affects your personality. It affects who you are. It affects your psychology. It's even linked to depression. In other words, you get a little fatter, you get a little bit sicker, and your brain starts playing little tricks on you. I think they're almost spiritual. They're almost satanic tricks. You start telling yourself these lies that, oh, you know what? You're getting sicker. You're over the hill. You're old now. Your joints are creaking and everything hurts and you're losing your memory and it's just the way it is and you're washed up and, you know, maybe life isn't even worth living anymore. And yet, when you give up the alcohol, which of course is driven by big business, right? Big tobacco's fading, thank God, in this country a little bit. Now you got big marijuana coming, right? You got all these factors that are just shooting holes in our health. You know, all the additives in our food, high fructose corn syrup and fake sugar, and our diet is a bunch of chemicals. What ends up happening is our psychology suffers. We get depressed. We get crankier. Our T levels cause us to be a little angrier. We get a little more persnickety. And it is related, isn't it?
Well, it is. And it's really more of a chicken and egg situation. What comes first? Is it your psychology goes bad and then you make choices that support that? Or is it that your body goes bad and you make psychological choices based on that? I think a lot of people are driven to comfort. They think somehow that if life is easy, if it's comfortable, that's going to solve things for them. But the reality of life is that this is Earth. It's hard here. You have to face up to that and take that on. You want a happy marriage, you got to work at that, at least for a while till you sort it out. You want a great career, you have to care about the work you choose to do. So when I was a student in med school, I learned this model called the triangles of health. And it basically, so you got the ascending line of a triangle that represents the choices that you make. You have the baseline of the triangle that represents the hand you've been dealt. So some people have a really strong constitution when they're born, you know, unstoppable people. I always think of George Burns, who was a famous comedian when I was a kid. George Burns lived to be 100 years old. And he smoked 18 cigars a day, and he drank whiskey every day, and he was running around with women in their 20s right up to the end of his life. And when he was about 92 years old, an interviewer asked him, your lifestyle choices are terrible. What do your doctors say about it? And he goes, what can they say? They're all dead. So he had a really strong constitution. He was able to do all of those things and still have a great life. But that baseline for some people is very short. They don't have a strong constitution. Some people are born with weak kidneys, weak livers, weak hearts. Some people are born with mental defects, visual defects, hearing defects. So that's the hand you're given. So if that line is short because you have a weak constitution, but the ascending line of that triangle is long because you make great choices, the hypotenuse of the triangle is long, and that's your quality of life. Conversely, if you have a long baseline, if your constitution is really strong, and we all have known people, I know in my college days, there were people that could do an all-nighter every single night, and it didn't seem to faze them. And I could do that once or twice, and then I'd be like out of it for a few days. So we're all a little different in this regard. But if you have a really strong constitution, you can make crappy choices and still have a great quality of life. I think it's better to bet on you not having that long of a baseline and making that ascending line, the choices you make, the best choices you possibly can make. So, you know, we're talking about health and its relationship to happiness. And I think one of the basic things that people can do to increase the quality of their life and give them the best health possible is to live a life that means something to you, to live a life of purpose, a life that's fulfilling. So that requires having a sense of purpose for yourself, a sense of mission for yourself in your life. And if you have that, that's going to drive you. You're going to make a lot of choices to support completing your mission, staying on purpose. But if you don't have that, what I used to say, in the absence of a clear sense of purpose in your life, you can become consumed with trivia, things that don't amount to anything, don't matter at all, and literally squander away your day-to-day life force until it's all over and you have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, social media loves to load you down with all of that flotsam and jetsam, doesn't it?
Yeah, really. Well, you see these young people now where they're scrolling. It's just scrolling, sliding their finger up and down a device. And they're looking for a dopamine hit, a little stimulation to make them feel alive. I feel sad when I see that, because here's an idea. How about actually living your life if you want to feel alive?
Bravo. I call that living vicariously through yourself. In other words, you're watching everybody else have all these adventures on TV and mistaking that for a real actual adventure, or somebody did something really cool on YouTube, or some Instagram influencer is having the time of their life. And you're like, wow, I like that. I'm on board with that. And you didn't do anything but stare into your screen.
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah.
I get that. That sense of vicarious living where you're watching somebody live, you're watching somebody make good choices. That's not the same as you living and you making good choices.
Yeah, COVID wasn't any help there either. It was a grand social experiment to see if we could get literally the entire society to sit down, shut up, stay inside, and not talk to each other. And the socio-political fallout from that was dire. Starting in the schools and the workplaces and everywhere else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I agree with you. This was a grand social experiment. And sadly, a lot of people just knuckled under and complied. And in part, that's because fear is such a powerful force in human lives. I used to teach this idea about motivation being the direction in which you're moving. You're either moving towards something or away from something. So if you're moving towards something, that's the motivation of desire, of wanting. And the motivation of desire is a long-term motivation. There were things I wanted to do as a kid, and I achieved those things by the time I got to this current age of 75, because my desire was strong. It carried across all of those years. Fear, on the other hand, is a short-term motivator. Fear is the kick in the rear that makes you move when you don't really want to. And what we watched was fear being weaponized by the authorities in such a way that it intimidated people and scared people so much that they believed what they were being told. And most of it we now see wasn't even true. Social distancing, for example, which is an oxymoron. There's nothing social about distancing. But that was made up, just made up out of whole cloth. There was nothing scientific about it, and yet they told us this was science talking to us.
Well, remember also, ivermectin was vilified vis-a-vis proof that it worked for some people. And now they finally come out and said, yeah, the truth is it kind of does work for a lot of people. But the problem was it was freely available and cheap. Yeah. And that doesn't help Big Pharma to thrive. So here, take Paxlovid instead, which is brought to you by the same company that brought you the shot that you were supposed to take to keep it from happening to begin with.
Yeah, we saw so many people fold where they cut themselves off. They stayed inside. They wore a mask, which is ridiculous. 20 years of science on masking. We know that a mask doesn't keep viruses out, and that if you breathe into it long enough, it fills up with bacteria and mold, and you're breathing your own carbon dioxide. You're literally sickening yourself by wearing a mask. But they needed people to comply because they were moving in the direction of this gene therapy that they wanted to get into every human being, this experimental mRNA gene therapy. And it was really effective. I think 81% of Americans, adult Americans, took at least one of those shots. Think about that, 81%. Now that number has collapsed. I think now you're down to like 10, 15% of people that are still rolling up their sleeves for these shots that don't work. But that was a very successful program because of the power of fear. And they made the fear into what sounded like something desirable. You want to protect grandma. You want to protect the weak among us. And a lot of people bought into that as an excuse for giving into their fear. But I live in a place where most people didn't fall for it. That's one of the beautiful things about North Idaho is people value their freedom here. They value their medical freedom here. And they did not comply with things that made no sense. Instead, they had the curiosity to test the things they were being told. And it didn't take a lot of testing to see that what we were being told was not accurate.
The significance of fear to the topic at hand today is something I really want to underscore here. My wife and I do watch TV like everybody else does, despite us decrying the negative, problematic situation of everybody staring into their screens so much. Of course, we watch our shows, and the streaming services know who we are. They probably eavesdrop on us, and we keep getting fed a bunch of pharma ads trying to tell us we should be afraid of some illness I didn't even know existed until 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And it's all fear-based. And the drugs that we're going to be on are designed to, assuage our fear that we're going to die of this thing. And if we just take these pills, we'll live longer. It won't cure us. It'll help us manage it. It's crazy. And we keep feeding this machine, and it's at the expense of our happiness. One of the things that you brought up that I think is very significant to this whole idea of fear charging this whole thing, supercharging it, is that we don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. Did we get unhappy first, then get unhealthy? Or did we get unhealthy first, and then did we get unhappy? And I think the quick and dirty answer there, Rick, is it's both, almost by design. Yeah. I mean, my marriage breaks up. I lose my job. I start, drinking a little too much. I start smoking again. I start eating all wrong, and, food comforts my pain, all this, that, and the other. And next thing you know, I'm fat, sick, and nearly dead, like the famous documentary says. And I feel like, well, you know what? I should just give up. My psychology, my well-being gets flushed down the toilet with the rest of my health. But then again, we can be having the time of our lives out there on vacation, eating a few too many, calories, drinking, imbibing a little bit too much. And the next thing you know, we're fat and happy until we start getting depressed. And the proof in the proverbial pudding seems to me that if I make a decision, now this is anecdotal on my part, but I've heard it from other people too. And I've visited a dietitian recently who corroborated this. Maybe you can also, maybe you'll argue with it. I don't know, but it's a good point to bring up regardless. If I'm not doing so well, my LBs are starting to creep up, I'm not feeling so fulfilled at work, this, that, and the other, I start feeling a little more depressed, like this isn't worth it. My doctor will want to put me on Zoloft when she hears that I have had like one day out of the last 30 where I didn't feel at my best. But again, that's just feeding the whole sick care culture. I don't need a pill. I need to stop drinking. I need to lose some pounds. I need to go on keto again. And the next thing you know, when my body gets kicked back into gear in a mere 72 hours, Rick, I feel great again. I feel like I'm 30 years younger already. I'm looking for projects to do. There's something to this. And this sick care culture that you speak of, and you're not the only one. My goodness, RFK's entire mandate working with the Trump administration for the next 4 years is basically all about that, right?
Oh, I'm so glad too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he's got some crazy ideas, but hopefully he sticks to the ones that are valid. But that's another podcast, probably another whole podcast host also. Should be covering that, not me. But I do like the direction of this country putting the brakes on just this crazy lack of health and us being complacent about it at best and inviting it at worst. It's almost like we like being comfortably miserable. It's like the movie WALL-E, yeah?
Well, that's interesting. So, I think that if you want to be happy, you have to be as healthy as you can be, because an unhealthy body is going to weigh you down and make you miserable. And you could be comfortable in that misery because it's familiar, but that's not the same as being happy. Comfort and happiness are not necessarily connected.
There you
go. All right. So if you're feeding yourself food and drink that's causing inflammation in your system, that inflammation becomes an invitation for disease and dysfunction. But if you remove inflammation from your system by minimizing your intake of those kinds of things, and you focus on healthy foods and make sure you're hydrated, that's a big step towards putting you in a place where you can fulfill yourself with purpose and live a life like it means something. I've coached and counseled a lot of people over the years, and the bottom line is if you live your life like it means something to you, it will, and you will reap the reward of that. But if you allow your days to pass and you're not fulfilling yourself as if somehow you'll get around to it later, you don't know how long you've got, and maybe you'll never get around to it, and you will have missed the opportunity for a life of health and happiness.
Quickly, and this will be review for a lot of guys, but rattle off some poor dietary choices that cause inflammation real quickly.
Well, I'd say that number one cause of inflammation for most people is sugar. White sugar in particular, but sugary foods, soft drinks, things like that. Your body is inflamed from sugar. So minimizing that, I'm lucky. My wife knows how to make all kinds of delicious foods without using sugar. She does use a little bit of honey, a little bit of monk fruit. There are recipes out there. She makes me brownies and banana muffins and baklava and all kinds of peanut butter balls, and all of it is delicious, and none of it is inflammatory because she doesn't use sugar in her cooking. So I would say that's one of those things that if you could just cut that out, you'd be gaining a huge advantage. One of the things that is finally starting to come to light is that it wasn't fat making people fat. It was the sugar and the inflammation that was causing people to gain so much weight. So that's a simple choice anybody could make. And another choice you can make to minimize inflammation is to stay hydrated. Doesn't mean you need to drink a ton of water, but it means you need to drink water. Most of the time when people are thirsty for something, if they reach for an alcoholic beverage or a soft drink, actually their body is wanting water. Pick up a glass of water, drink it down. That helps your body eliminate stuff it can't use. And because we are mostly water, it's nourishing and replenishing. So those are a couple of simple things that anybody could do to increase their health and minimize inflammation.
Yeah, most of us are chronically dehydrated.
Yep. Think about it. If you spend most of your time indoors, you're missing all these cues that you would have if you spent time in nature. If you're taking a hike, your body wants water. It'll tell you. If you're working in an office, sitting at a desk, you may be getting that message and not noticing it because your brain is so preoccupied with whatever task you're doing.
Isn't that something? Alcohol, caffeine, seed oils. I've heard all of those things are inflammatory.
Well, so I'm of the school of thought that says moderation in all things, including moderation. So
fair enough.
You gotta leave a little wiggle room. So, I remember when we go to my in-laws' house, and my mother-in-law used to make cookies using terrible ingredients, and I'd always eat a couple of them because she made them for me. And I felt like that was the better thing to do than to be like, I don't eat that. And it didn't hurt me because it wasn't a normal part of my life. It was a kind of a dietary aberration. That kind of thing is okay. Every once in a while, you let go have fun, go drink 2 beers and sit at the bar and laugh with a friend. It's when you do these things chronically that they lead to chronic inflammation and chronic problems. So I think it's important to have some wiggle room in life where you can make different choices, but it's a momentary thing, not a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think it's all about your habits and the lifestyle you're living, not one specific plate of food or one specific cocktail at a specific time. Makes sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I really want to talk a little bit more about this relationship between the messaging from the media and in the 21st century world and the fear that drives us to, frankly, be bored and unfulfilled. Because I think that might be the kernel of this entire topic, Rick. I mean, the landscape is littered with the graves of dudes who retired at age 67 and were dead 8 months later.
That's true.
Because they were bored. They didn't have anything to do, didn't want anything, and didn't find out till later that retirement wasn't going to be everything they thought it was going to be. Also, people lose the love of their lives and are dead 6-8 months later, following them to the grave.
Yep.
When we lose our purpose, when we lose the life force that drives us to get up in the morning and want to do something and want to have purpose and want to feel capable and useful, we get sick and we get depressed and we, probably get unlikable. Again, linking your favorite topics here. And it's because we weren't happy. We become unhealthy, and it's a vicious circle. And yet, if you look at what I unaffectionately call the suburban sleepwalk, people are told that, having a safe house in the suburbs and living a safe life with, a cat and a dog, and cats and dogs can make your life more interesting, actually.
Definitely.
People don't have the cats and dogs because they're too much trouble. They don't have any kids because they're too much trouble, right? And most people aren't even getting married anymore because it's too much trouble. I just want to be alone in my suburban environment, lock the doors, have nobody bother me. Heck, I don't even want to go outside. Just let me order DoorDash, right? And watch it all happen on TV. And then we go, well, I'm miserable. And then we get on social media, and what do we, the most blessed people in the world, do? We complain. And we have something to complain about. We ordered up this lifestyle, or we followed that rabbit hole because it's what we were told to do, and now we're not so happy. And everybody out there who's making a difference in the world, dating, having kids, buying the dogs and cats, although these two whippets around here are going to drive me nuts. I always tell everybody having whippets is like dating an aerobics instructor. No matter what you do, they're going to be better than you. And it's really keeps you on your toes. But all these things that fill our life with stuff to do and with activity, and not pseudo activity like, churning on a Stairmaster or walking with the dogs around the neighborhood at night, but going on an adventure and going on a mountain bike trip, or even, darn it, going fishing. This is stuff people don't think to do. And as far as my vocation, it isn't necessarily going to be anything that I'm passionate about. My goodness, work is supposed to be work, right? It can't be something that's actually fulfilling and that I like doing. It's got to be this drudgery that I put 40 hours a week minimum towards so I can get a paycheck. And someday when I'm 65 or 70, this is Tim Ferriss stuff, of course, right? I'll be free from it and I can do whatever I want. And then you wake up that day when you have a gold watch and you can do whatever you want, and voila, you got nothing to do. And we sit here and we wonder why our health sucks and why our psychology sucks and why we're mean to each other. It all kind of makes sense when you roll it up. So
it sure does.
Let's roll it out, man. What should men do if they can really relate to what we're talking about here, Rick? What's the magical elixir to cure all this?
I sit around solving the world's problems with my friends, and we come up with all kinds of things. But I would say this. First of all, I'm retired. I retired at 67. It was a career ambition of mine to retire at the age of 67. I'm now 75. Whenever I would tell people I was retired, I'd say, I'm tired twice. But the truth is, I just wanted to free myself up for a new chapter in my life. My purpose remains what it's always been. My sense of purpose in my life has carried over past my retirement. And that's why I have a very active life. As soon as I'm done talking with you, I'm heading to town for a town hall meeting. A doctor friend of mine is hosting a town hall to talk about public health. And I'm going to go just because I'm interested, and I'll probably have something to say. I'm involved in the political system up here because I don't think we can afford to sit on the sidelines and watch what politicians do to us anymore. That was another big lesson of the last few years, is we have to participate or we are literally victimizing ourselves. But I would like to offer this to your audience. I think this idea of purpose is so fundamental, and a lot of people think that it's impossible to figure out, but I know a way to figure it out real easy. A purpose consists of two elements, vision and values. What I mean by values are the stepping stones of importance in your life. What matters more than anything to you? So some people, what matters is adventure. Other people, what matters is family. Other people, what matters is service. Other people just love. But whatever you value in life, if somebody said to you, if you had no excuses, what would you be doing right now? And you could come up with an answer to that. And then somebody said, okay, but why that? That would tell you what you value. So I told this to somebody one time. They said, oh, I'd be sailing the seas on a tall ship. I'm like, really? You could do anything? You have all the time, money, energy, talent, and opportunity in the world. That's what you'd be doing? I'm like, yeah. I go, why that? They said, adventure. It seems like it'd be a great adventure. Well, you don't have to sail the seas on a tall ship to have adventure in your life. You can have adventure by driving home a way you've never taken before, or trying food you've never tried before, or talking to somebody you've never talked to before. Adventure is something you can bring into your real life without needing to go to such extraordinary circumstances. So if you know what your values are, if you know 3 to 5 answers to the question, if you had no excuses, what would you be doing right now? If you can come up with that, and I always tell people, take a month, ask yourself every day at different times a day, if I had no excuses, what would I be doing right now? Why that? That gives you your values. Second part is vision. Well, we can't really see very far ahead in life. We're driving like through a fog. We got the headlamps on. We can see 10 yards in front of us. But the vision I'm talking about is, if the world was the way you think it ought to be, what would that world look like? What would that world be? Your vision of a perfect world. Because if you combine your vision of how you think the world ought to be with your values, let's say fun, adventure, creativity, and love, you combine those two things, you can get up every morning and know the purpose of my life is to create a world in which children are the top priority of society and everything is organized to benefit them while fulfilling my values of creativity, love, family, and relationship. You can have that sense of purpose every day of your life, even on a bad day where you use a little bit of fear to kick yourself in the rear. I don't want to let this day get away from me. How can I use it better? If you have that sense of purpose, it will drive you in your relationships. It will drive you in your career choices. And when you retire, it will continue to drive you towards fulfillment. And to me, fulfillment and happiness, we're talking about the same thing.
Everything you're talking about seems so obvious as you speak it so clearly to us. And yet here we are as men, and we love our setup. We love our routine. We want to get up and keep doing the same thing we always did. We don't like being disruptive. That feels unsafe to us. And the next thing you know, we're unfulfilled, and we keep doing that unfulfilling thing like hamsters running on a wheel, which must be very unfulfilling, for years and years and years. And adding to the irony there is the first guy who could step up to the plate and offer life's most simple adventure to a woman is going to capture that woman's attention, because the women are just as bored and afraid as certainly any man is. And we've got to lead. We've got to be the ones who step up and say, hey, you know what? Enough of this mundane melodrama of American life. I want to go out there and make an adventure happen, even if it's this big. And it's just amazing to watch women light up. It's amazing to watch your kids light up when you do that. And, you're absolutely correct. As many grand adventures as we've had around this household over the years, sometimes it's the simple adventures that really make everybody happier. And, well, you know what? Going out and doing something other than sitting around eating high fructose corn syrup all day is going to make you healthier. So there we go, full circle.
I think that women are drawn to, attracted to, and want to be with men who live their lives with purpose. Absolutely. I don't think there's a better turn on in the world than somebody who's making something with their life, who's creating something with their life, who's living every day like it means something. Women are drawn to that, and children, that gives them something to look up to. That creates role models for them. When I was a kid, I looked up to astronauts because look at what they were doing. They were risking everything. They were just going for it. And I got lucky, by the way. In my speaking career some years ago, I got to know a few astronauts, and I actually got to be part of a mission to the International Space Station. I got a thing on my wall with a couple of mission patches on it.
You actually flew to it? You were an astronaut?
No, I wish. I was a part of the ground support team for one of the astronauts on the space station, and he called me twice from space, and both times I had somebody standing around. Yeah, I was like, "Hang on, I got to take this. It's from space."
Right on. That's a long distance phone call. I got to take it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's wonderful. And one thing that I would present as a caveat to what you just said is, have that purpose, be driven, but you can't do that at the expense of the people in your life. You got to love your wife. You got to love your girlfriend. You've got to make time for your children and find joy in what that purpose is. Otherwise, if you're just grinding, you're going to make yourself unhappy and sick again. So there's got to be some balance. Like you said, moderation and everything, including moderation, right?
That's right.
Yeah. His name is Dr. Rick Kirschner, coming to us from Northern Idaho. The website is talknatural.com, but you can go to mountaintop.podcast.com/Rick and get there quickly and easily without having to remember that URL. When you go to his website, you will get to see Rick's documentary about the healthcare system absolutely for free when you go to that website, which you can once again head to by going to mountaintop.podcast.com/Rick. After 240 some episodes, we have not had a /Rick yet. Go figure. Also, Rick's book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, How to Bring Out the Best in People at Their Worst, is going to go back to the top of the Amazon influencer queue at mountaintopodcast.com/Amazon. If you're listening to this show within a couple weeks of its release, you'll find it right there near the top. I highly recommend it. It's good stuff. Dr. Rick Kirschner, thank you so much for joining us again. You're such a great guest. I love the fact that you're a 75-year-old guy living your best life, and I think that alone is inspiring. Add to that all the great words and wisdom that you're bestowing upon us, and it just made for a great show. Thanks.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me back on. It's fun talking to you.
Yeah, man, likewise. And gentlemen, go to mountaintopodcast.com, visit our sponsors, Origin in Maine, the Keyport, and Hero Soap. And when you do partake of anything from our wonderful longtime sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to take an additional 10% off. Master classes, every month we do a deep dive into an area that is going to help you be a better man and be better with women. And as fortune would have it, as I talked about at the beginning of this episode, this coming Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, is going to be the masterclass on winning. No excuses, no apologies, just victory. Go ahead and grab your ticket for that by going to mountaintopodcast.com/masterclass. Men who get in on the masterclasses are almost always glad they did get in on the masterclasses. When I say almost, it's like a 99.9% happiness rate. Okay. I don't know if they're going to make you healthier, but sometimes maybe so. So check out the master classes. Also get on my calendar. Let's talk for 25 or 30 minutes, gentlemen, about you, where you are. Hey, how are you going to live your best life, especially with the right woman in it? We can get on the phone or on Zoom and talk about that. Won't cost you a dime. I call it results in advance. You will emerge from that call with something you can take with you to, do exactly that. Be a better man and get better with women. And if it makes sense to put a coaching program together, we can do that as well. MountaintopPodcast.com is where you sign up. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.